Hey guys, I'm sitting here with my brand new, used, other way, Turbo 2.3. Hey guys, it's super late out, it's super cold. I had to come out here though. I'm editing my engine video right now and I realized I did not talk enough about my engine. So I gotta tell you guys where I got this engine from, why I picked it, what's the history. So first off, let's look at this beauty. Alright, here she is. This is the Turbo 2.3 liter. Backstory. I got this engine from a guy who, well, let's go back to the beginning. Tegan calls me up and he's like, hey man, I know you wanted a turbo for your Pinto. This guy's got a turbo engine, he's asking 1,500 bucks. And I'm like, oh, that seems like it's an okay price, let's go look at it. So we go over to this guy and we're like, yeah, let's just take a look at it, right? Just kind of tire kicking a little bit. Maybe it's a good idea. So I show up there and this guy's garage is immaculate, like not a total mess like mine, like absolutely immaculate. You could tell like the engine's 50 times more dirty since I've had it. When he gave it to me, like there were no paint chips, that's all from me. Like the guy was awesome. And then he's like, oh yeah, well, you know, I'll drop it to $1,000 and oh, also, if you want this, you can have the transmission too. So I got the transmission with it for free. He gave me a spare bell housing. I think I now have 2 spare heads for it. I also have the whole wiring harness, like 2 or 3 ECUs, like everything that a guy needs to build a car. So yeah, it was a super good deal, but it was also the exact engine I was looking for because this 2.3 liter turbo can bolt directly into this car. And this is a Cosworth engine. So what I'm going for with this car is I want this car to be like Ken Block's Escort. So his engine is not this engine, it's a reproduction of this. But basically Escort took this engine, redid the head and made a dual overhead cam, obviously some other changes. And it's just an epic engine, so I'm super happy to have this going in here. It's not actually a Cosworth engine, same block though, same basic design. So we're shooting to make this kind of like a little drift car. So I'm super pumped about it. I hope you guys think it's cool too. Lots more to come on this engine, but I just feel like I needed to, you know, give you guys a little bit more background about this. I feel like there's a few other things I want to tell you, but I'll edit it out later. I'm like whispering so I don't wake up my wife. It's pretty late. Do I have any other last comments? Yeah, if you don't know the history of the Cosworth engine, it's like a really famous sort of 4-cylinder race engine from back in the day. I'm gonna show a clip of what it sounds like. It's super awesome. So really stoked to be putting that in here, and I just felt like I needed to tell you more about it. Oh yeah, a couple other things to note, like what's different between this and the engine we took out. The engine we took out is a 2.3 liter also, and it's very, very similar. There are a couple other changes, but the biggest thing, the reason you want the turbo motor is because it has forged connecting rods. And I think forged pistons as well. And so that's what allows you to put extra boost into it. If you were to just use a regular 2.3 liter, which is also called the Lima engine, because they were built at Ford's Lima plant back in the day, they probably would blow up pretty early, like 200 horsepower kind of max is what I've heard. I'm going to try and push this one to about 300 wheel horsepower. And I've heard of guys getting 1,000 horsepower out of these. I'm not going to do that. There's ways to do that. But for what we're trying to do here, Ken Block's car is about 300 wheel horse. We're going to do fairly similar power. And this is a pretty lightweight car. I hope my sound comes out decent because I'm trying to whisper. So fingers crossed. Sound's going to be good. All right, back to the studio. And this is from a Merkur or a Thunderbird. I can't remember which right now. But in this corner, I have the old one that's non-turbo from a 2.3. So getting pumped up. Really the only thing I got to figure out right now is the motor and transmission mounts. So I just thought, hey, let's do a little comparison. Besides being dirty and grimy, the first thing I find a little alarming is that there's not a lot of room in the Pinto, and this one seems a lot smaller than this one. But then I realized it's not as big a deal because, you know, I took the alternator off and the power steering pump and the intake and all that. The turbo looks like it does stick out to the left a little bit more than the old manifold did, and I don't have that here right now. I'll go get it later and do a comparison, but I mean, just on the intake side, looks like we're sitting at roughly 8 inches from the intake ports. Wait a minute, oh, I'm on the wrong side. Yeah, and then if this one looks to be about 8. So I mean, honestly, pretty much exactly the same. I'm a little, like I said, I'm a little worried about the turbo. There's not a lot of clearance in the motor mount area. I haven't quite figured out how I'm gonna make the motor mounts line up. Hoping I don't have to cut the fenders to make this all fit in. But I'm super pumped right now. Hey guys, finally got around to cleaning the motor mounts. It's almost winter here. I really gotta get going. I got a whole bunch of stuff to do. I gotta clean up these motor mounts, finish getting the transmission ready, swapping from the old C4 auto into a T5 manual. So I'm gonna show you guys some of that. Gotta attach everything to my motor. That should be perfectly working. We're not gonna run the intercooler to start. We're just gonna get it running with the 170 horsepower, and then we'll go up from there eventually. Want to get her going though. So a lot of work to do. Just thought I would show you guys quick. I didn't get before pictures, but this thing was filthy, absolutely black everywhere, covered in grease. And all I did is I took a little trick from my friend Pete, using this heavy duty oven cleaner, if you can believe it or not. And it's a super cheap way to clean parts as compared to buying more expensive stuff. I just coated it 3 times and sprayed it off with a pressure washer 3 times, and I'm shocked at how much came off. You know, obviously this rubber that's on here didn't come off. But I mean, very little grease left, maybe just a little bit here and there, but pretty much just gonna take a brush to it at this point, and I think that's gonna get the rest of it. So it really helped out doing that. Pretty cool trick. So look up my friend Pete, he goes through it really well if you haven't heard of him. This stuff stinks really bad. It doesn't actually say on here that you need to. It doesn't have any don't breathe it warnings, and I'm sure housewives everywhere are putting this on their oven and breathing it straight up, but they probably don't do that quite as close as I am right now, or as heavy. Maybe they do, who knows. I chose to open my garage door because I just wasn't getting a warm fuzzy feeling about the way it smelled. But I'm gonna let this sit for a bit, and while I do that, turn you guys around. So you may notice that I left this kind of still somewhat dirty. I think it came pretty clean. I'm not gonna worry about getting all that last little bits of grit. At least I can see it again and it's somewhat clean. Again, I'm gonna have to take this whole car apart again for paint and prep and clean everything, and I do plan on driving it in the rain. I'm not too worried about a little bit, but it's a lot better. Before, this thing looked like a big pile of mud. Didn't even really look like metal. So I'm pretty happy. Good enough that I can at least start getting things back into the car. Hey guys, so just checking in here. Honestly, I kind of did some things without recording because sometimes you just want to get stuff done and you don't feel like holding the camera. And as bad as I am at making these videos, it still takes me a lot of work. So kind of just did some stuff on my own, but I'll just catch you up quick, and then we're going to get into final transmission assembly. So I swapped these old motor mounts out. These were for a Merkur. I put the Pinto ones back on the engine. They actually made up perfectly. Had some pretty close interference with the oil pan on this side. I'm assuming that's not the factory oil pan and gasket. I couldn't say for sure, but it wasn't quite the easiest fit in the world, but it did fit. I had these brackets. I also had these brackets, so one on each side. The one on this side actually looks pretty legitimate. The one on the other side definitely looked custom fabricated. So this bracket went on right here and connected to these bolts. Probably kind of hard to see. Angles aren't perfect here, but it went on and it connected down to the bottom of the engine here. Right in there. I just don't understand what it was doing. Oh, sorry, I'm shaking the camera all over the place. And on the other side, same thing. So this is the bracket from the other side, and it was attached to the starter, and it was actually in such a way that I couldn't even get the, sorry, so it was attached like this from the motor mount again, bracing onto the starter bolts onto the side of the back of the bell housing. Now, engines produce vast majority of their stress loads through torque, and this brace does not do anything for torque on either side. In fact, all it would do is strengthen the connection of the bell housing to the engine, which I don't know of any examples of bell housings just blowing off of engines. I'd really like to know the story behind these parts. Like I said, I actually had to cut it off. You can see I had to grind it off because I couldn't get a wrench on the bolt. It just seemed really unnecessary and dumb. So yeah, I'm getting rid of them. If anybody knows anything about those and they are required, please let me know. I will fabricate something up that's better and put it back on. But yeah, it just seemed really stupid. So this is the clutch. I have to assume this clutch has been replaced at one point or another, just because there were 200,000 K on the car and it actually looks not too worn in there. So I mean, clutch looks decent. I'm gonna have to pull this whole engine out and transmission out again when I go to paint the car anyway. Right now I just want to get it going. So we're leaving that clutch. We're gonna assemble the transmission and slap her on there. Also, another thing I found really challenging was to hang this engine from 4 points. There's just nowhere to tie the chain to on the back corner. So I'm only holding on by 3 spots right now. Once I put the transmission on, I'm gonna hang off the bell housing bolts. Which is going to be a pain. I'll have to reach in behind there and tighten them in once the engine's in the car, but I don't really see another option. So yeah, that's where we're at with that.